Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu held a rare international press conference about the war in Gaza. And when asked if Israel was winning the, quote, propaganda war against Hamas, here's what he said.
No, I think that we've not been winning it, to put it mildly. I think there are vast forces that are arrayed against us. Among other things, the algorithms of the social network that are driving a lot of everything else, you know. And people who really know, and they're the foremost people in this field in the world, they're telling me that about 60% of the responses on the social media are bots. They can categorically say they're bots. And they're bots that, you know, especially in America, you know, they want to attack the support that Israel has from the Republican side. So they describe how, you know, themselves as homespun Southerners, except they're riding from Asia somewhere, you know. That's a big issue. We have to contend with it. And we also have to stand up and tell the truth, probably at greater frequency than we're doing now. That's exactly what I'm trying to do now.
I'm joined now by Dominique Hoffman of the Philos Project. Now, Dominique, you've done some work about the new propaganda, especially on the American right, and who's funding it. What can you tell us?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that clip is so important. So just to zoom out a little bit, historically, the American left has been sympathetic to the Palestinian cause. And then after October 7th, we saw a shift in that they weren't just pro-Palestinian, pro-two-state solution, but were overtly pro-Hamas. And so that was a new front as far as rhetoric in the propaganda war on the left. But what has emerged since October 7th and the perfect storm with domestic politics here in the United States following the Biden administration has been pressure from the political right. You can call it the new right, the woke right, which depending on where you sit, that's a controversial term. But there's been a concerted effort to push anti-Israel, anti-Zionist positions on the right. I think we've seen that divide even the current administration. We saw that on display when it came to responding to Iran, those advocating for isolationism. But if you look deeper to people like Tucker Carlson or Candace Owens, we see a concerted effort to demonize the Jewish people, Israel, and that's being funded by Qatar. So we see a conventional war playing out in Israel and Gaza. There is a real war front, and then the other front is on social media. And Qatar, which has funded billions of dollars into the United States, has largely focused on the political left, which was in power for the last 10 years. Also a lot of cultural influence, but as we've seen a reboot in MAGA, this Americana movement in the United States with Trump's second term, we've seen Qatar look to conservative influencers to fund a new campaign on the American right.
Wow. Well, when it comes to the propaganda war, I think at the end of the day, people just want to know what's the truth. And now there's a war for the truth. And, Bibi Netanyahu also addressed fake news coming out of Gaza in his press conference. Let's take a look.
Everything that I told you could be verified easily, but it hasn't. And the international press has bought hook, line, and sinker Hamas statistics, Hamas claims, Hamas forgeries, and Hamas photographs. For example, these three children. The first one is Osama al-Rakoub. He is in Italy getting treatment because Israel got him out. That's what he looks like today. He has a genetic disease that damages the lungs and digestive system. It makes it hard to absorb nutrients and gain weight. Okay? So Israel facilitated Osama's travel to Italy, where he got the medical aid that transformed his position. The second one is Abdul Qadir al-Fayumi. He suffers from a genetic neurological disorder, spinal muscular atrophy, a degenerative condition that causes muscle wasting, weakness, and severe weight loss unrelated to nutrition. This was the real cause of his frail appearance, not starvation. In fact, he was treated in Israel in 2018. Doesn't help because it's a congenital disease and it defies most treatment at least. The third one is the most celebrated one. This is a New York Times cover photo. It's on the front page of Muhammad Zakaria Ayub and his mother. Muhammad Zakaria Ayub is suffering from a genetic illness, which you're familiar with. It's called cerebral palsy. His mother is well fed, and his brother is healthy. I'm looking right now into the possibility of a governmental suit against the New York Times because this is outrageous. Of course, the correction was postage size. I don't know where it was buried. But this is outrageous. These are the 3 most celebrated photos, and they're all fake.
So, Dominique, how do we know what's even true? I mean, how should we respond when we see all of these images coming out of Gaza?
That's a tough question because, as I pointed out, we're getting it from now the left and the right. So deciphering between images that are true or false is difficult. Gazawood is like a term for the image propaganda that's come out of Gaza for years. So it's hard to distinguish between what are real photos, what are photos taken from other famines or crises across the Middle East and repurposed as evidence of the genocide happening in Gaza. But I think what's also really disturbing is we've seen a lot of images coming out of the remaining hostages who are alive in Gaza, really sad, emaciated photos. And in this press conference, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu compared images of children in Gaza to those of the hostages. And if you look at those images, it looks like you could be looking at historic images following the Holocaust, and yet the world is silent to those images coming out of the tunnels in Gaza. And there's a lot of buzz around either edited AI photos or, again, photos taken from Yemen or other famines that are repurposed and claimed to be coming out of Gaza. So as far as where we should look to, I would say, sadly, I in the past would not say conventional news sources, but I would say look at news coming out of both sides of the aisle in the United States, because I think a lot of this new media with podcasters or people on Instagram, the threshold for proving what they're saying is a lot lower because they're creatives without a corporate machine behind them. So while in the past I might not have turned to conventional media, I actually think that there's some checks and balances there.
So let me go back to something you said. You said that a lot of this recent wave against Israel on the right is being funded by Qatar. Can you expand on that a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. So as I mentioned, the new media, the culture and I think the temperature on the American right since COVID has been great skepticism of elites, whether that be politicians or corporate media. We were lied to about the origins of COVID, the science of staying 6 feet apart. So you have an entire GOP that is skeptical of the official narrative. And from that, we've seen the rise of YouTube personalities. Tucker Carlson went independent. Candace Owens went independent. And because they claim to represent the American people, I think there's this false trust in them that what they say represents their own interest. But what we've seen is just a shift. Qatar has recognized that. Again, they're funding the media on the right now that Trump is in office and there's a conservative administration. But that funding has also followed these independent influencers. And so that same money that used to fund corporate media, the elites, the propaganda, is now just being redirected to these independent media personalities. And it's actually hard to track. With fair registration, we've been able to see some money move to Tucker Carlson, for example, when he interviewed the Prime Minister of Qatar. And also, if you just look at his interview with the president of Iran, you see a very scripted interview. Tucker sounds like he's parroting many of the talking points of top Iranian officials, which should ring some alarm bells for those on the conservative right. And even if you hone in on the rhetoric that he uses, he referred to Iran as a country, Israel as a regime. So you have to kind of listen to the rhetoric that he's using. I'm sure, and of course, I have no proof of this, so this is conjecture on my part, but I'm sure there's official rhetoric and questions that were approved, for example, in that interview with the Iranian president.
You know, there is a lot of skepticism on the right, but I think it's well-founded in the sense that, this whole Russian collusion thing, 2 or 3 years later, JK, LOL, yeah, we made it up. Or there was a point where even saying the word hydroxychloroquine or ivermectin or myocarditis could get you banned from social media, could get you ostracized and called out and deplatformed. And, you see what's happening with these images of these kids, like on the front page of the New York Times. Clearly, this kid had, pre-existing conditions. And so the idea of us being manipulated is not new. It's being, reinforced. But my question is, people say, "Oh, Israel's manipulating you at CBN." Well, like, listen, like all you people out there, like, no, I've never received a dime from the state of Israel. I've never even been to an AIPAC conference. I don't know a single person that works for AIPAC, and we just get a lot of shade for simply allowing the Israeli side of the argument to be had. But here's my question: how do you know that you're not being manipulated? Right, you're getting all these statistics and all these images from Hamas, which look at their founding document, look at their quote unquote, it's like a Declaration of Independence. What was their opening line of their founding document? Look it up if you don't believe me. Hamas's opening charter: Israel will exist and will continue to exist until Islam will obliterate it. I mean, that's their founding document. And so I do find it interesting that people have this skepticism, except for when Hamas says things. So to me, that I think is incumbent upon us as Christians to have a little discernment, to seek God's wisdom, to not just jump. And here's the thing: for 4,000 years, if one people group has been like, it's the Jews, they're always the ones scapegoating. Maybe there's something else happening here. And again, that's not to excuse things. I think there's 1.5 million things we can criticize Israel with. There's things about Israel that I vehemently disagree with. You know who else I disagree with? A lot of times, the United States. But never did that make me think, the United States doesn't have a right to exist. I just think it's incumbent upon us to give it a beat, to be like, wait a second, everyone's accusing Israel of manipulating people, but it's like, how do you know that you're not being manipulated? So I just think it's an important point, and I think this conversation, just to have some discernment and to wait a minute before we jump on all these trains, because look, if a lot of these really famous photos of emaciated kids are kids with pre-existing conditions, and they knew about it before they sent these photos out, you're doing a disservice to the people that are actually in suffering. So again, we all just need to check our own hearts, to make sure that we're seeking wisdom and discernment before we, like people have for the past 4,000 years, been like, it's the Jews. Again, that's not saying that we can't criticize Israel. Criticize Israel till the sun goes down. That's fine. I just think that we should be careful of manipulation, not just from Israel, but from everyone else who's against Israel. But that's just me on my soapbox for a little bit. But Dominique, I'll give you the last word. How should folks, how should we be viewing this conflict?
I think you've raised some incredible points. And the first one being the discernment of, let's take a step back. If the radical left and the radical right and then Islamists all agree on the same talking points, I think we should all wonder who is funding it, who is coordinating it, and to what end. Because if you zoom out, there is a very strategic end here. And it's the perversion of the truth, which is in Israel and the Middle East. The Jews and Christians have one common enemy, which are the Islamists in the region. I mean, Christianity has diminished greatly, almost to the point of extinction in the region, even over the last 100 years. And so there's this perversion of the truth, because there are many Christians who feel outraged. And again, not that you can't criticize Israel. In fact, if you've ever been to Israel, you know that one of the biggest critics of the Israeli government is an Israeli themselves.
Right.
They're quite critical of their government. So the argument is not to give a pass to the Israeli government for anything, or to not hold criticism politically. But there is a larger concerted effort to try and alienate Israelis and the Jews, even in the diaspora here in the United States, away from Christians, because who wins in the end? It's the Islamists and the Islamist regimes in the region who have now kind of pitted U.S. interests against Israelis. And there's also a religious implication to that as well, which is Christianity has diminished, as I said, across the region. Indigenous Christians, some of the first Christian communities after Christ. And that's what people on the right should actually be outraged over. And I critique people like Tucker Carlson and Candace Owens, who have this manufactured outrage for the very, very small and diminished Christian community in Gaza, diminished under Hamas over the last decade plus. But they're very quiet when Islamists in Africa behead 70 Christians, or Syria. And so again, that discernment of follow the rhetoric, listen to what they're saying. When Tucker Carlson has reverence for the president of Iran and calls it a country and doesn't ask about Christian persecution or question, why is Iran the fastest growing underground church, I believe in the world, but definitely in the region. The world. That to me tells me that his journalism is maybe disingenuous, or maybe there's some interest that is pointing him in a different direction than true moral or religious outrage for the Christian communities in the Gaza Strip, in the West Bank, in Israel. And again, the fastest growing Christian community in Israel, or in the Middle East, is in Israel. So again, when the facts don't line up and when there's this manufactured Christian outrage, I think we as a Christian community in the United States have a responsibility to kind of check that and make sure that it aligns with truth.
Dominique Hoffman, thank you for your time, your wisdom, and your perspective, my friend.
Thank you so much.